I'm Dr. Bart Rademaker, and this is the Doctor's Guide podcast, raw and unfiltered. Once again, bringing to you some of the insights and distinctions and the action steps that you might want to take for any kind of health condition that really bothers you at this time that is relevant from what you're going to hear from us today. Or maybe it's someone that you really care about. They're undergoing a similar condition or issue or challenge in life, and you can simply direct them to this podcast to give them some of those insights that you hope will absolutely make the difference. And so, what is this really all about if you're a first time listener? Well, here's the thing. I'm a plastic and reconstructive surgeon and been on this health optimizing journey for the last 20 years. And really recognize that over the last 20 years, we've had so many advances in so many aspects of health and wellness that most people are just not even aware of. And if they are searching on the internet, they're actually totally overwhelmed with that information. And is this right for them? And then they spend so much money, way too much money, on stuff that actually does nothing, and it's not their fault, except for the fact that, or it's not, let me rephrase it, it's not the fault of the product. It was just the fault of the application of the product. What I mean by that, everything is context dependent. And so that's your job. And so who's going to guide you? Well, that's the purpose of this podcast, is to give you the guidance as far as how you can make better decisions for yourself. And so, like other podcasts, which we are not like, they're selling products which may be not right for you, or they may be right for you, or they're hyper promoting a certain process or a person. We're just sharing with you a process by which you can then start making better decisions for yourself. And how do we do that? Through role playing. And so what happens is, with a very short period of about 6, maybe 8 minutes, one of my guests, amazing guests, by the way, that will be sharing a problem that they're having, a challenge, or maybe it's somebody else. And so don't ever take these things like, yeah, this is that problem of the person, but it's for you to understand and witness maybe yourself in this challenge, and then have the other one be the guide to some form of resolution to give you the idea. Yes, there is hope and there is clarity at the end of this, and it is really up to you to figure out what you need to do next. Too often we're abdicating the responsibility on other people, whether it's family, whether they're doctors or other health and wellness professionals. And ultimately, the purpose of this podcast is to share with you that there's so many people out there that can support you, that can help you, that can guide you. It's also up to you and your responsibility to find them as well. So I'm going to have each of my guests briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll go into about a 6-minute role play. And after that, what we'll do is we'll unpack it. So give you the distinctions and the action steps, giving more context that potentially would help you with your particular problem. So I'm going to start off with Amanda. Thank you so much for joining me today. Just a brief introduction of yourself. Who are you? We'll go then to Willow, and then we'll jump into the role play.
Thank you. I'm Amanda Nagai. I am a poet, artist, and grief space holder and active and advocate. Um, yeah, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And all humility put aside, if that's the right way to say it, Amanda is amazing, and definitely someone that is very incredibly supportive with her own personal experiences and guiding you to how should I put it, overcome the scary journey that many people undergo with cancer or other kinds of ailments, and with some very specific tools that can absolutely guide you towards some form of resolution that you won't be getting from conventional medicine. Nothing wrong with conventional medicine, but they're just focused on something else, and they're looking at things through a different lens. And the lens that Amanda provides is spectacular. Willow.
I am Willow Starr. Thank you for having me, and Amanda here. I am 7.5 years out from a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and I help other people feel empowered and help them advocate in their own health journey to make decisions that are right for them.
And here again, Willow also undergoing these challenging experiences, overcoming them with absolute grace, which means you can too, and no better person than to also guide you, and with also the incredible programs that she has to offer for anyone with any of these challenges. So thank you so much for being on this podcast. So let's get started with the role play. Amanda, you've got a problem. I'm sorry, Willow has a problem, and
I have a
Amanda is
problem.
the guide. And you got about 6 or 8 minutes to do it. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Hey, Willow.
What's happening, Mama?
Just wanted to check in with you. I hadn't talked with you in a while, and I saw through your text the other day, you've got some more scan results, and how are you feeling?
I've been doing this a while, and I'm fine. I'm totally fine. Like it can feel like a lot, and then I can always see the bright side. And, I like to stay focused in the positive, so I'm trusting. And,
Mm.
and
Mm.
it can be a lot, but I'm all right. Thank you for
Aw.
checking.
I so admire your positivity and like the joy that you bring even to your cancer journey. Like that's a piece that you're always teaching me. That's a piece I need. Um, and I noticed in the messages that you sent me that there was a lot of like emotions there, and like you were needing space to not even respond right away, and you just wanted to take some, and I'm so glad that you took that space for yourself. So I'm curious, like I'm hearing positivity and I'm really excited about that. And I'm also hearing maybe that it's hard. And I'm wondering if you're making space for the voice of it's being hard.
That's very funny that you say that. I'm feeling emotional, literally, just hearing that.
Oh.
And yeah, I think, as I did express, as I wasn't responding to your messages,
Mm.
um, yeah, it can feel, sometimes I don't know how to feel. And I don't know if
Mm.
I'm like, I don't know if I am pushing something away that is
Oh.
supposed to be addressed or not. And
Mm.
I get this sense, it's been coming up a lot for me lately, is just like, if I start crying, maybe I won't stop. That
Mm.
it just feels like everything kind of piles up, and the uncertainty.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I've been feeling that lately, like I'll feel an emotion, but then I can
Mm.
easily see the other side. And I think that's what makes it hard, because I truly,
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I've heard that before from a lot of my friends as well, of that fear of when you go in, you might not be able to come out. And yeah, the way I relate to crying and processing emotion is like it's sort of a wave that keeps coming, and like I think it only becomes super overwhelming when we won't look at it. And you're so good at the positivity and the strength around it too. And I'm wondering, have you tried, what is it like to hold both in your body right now? Have you tried doing both at the same time? Like feeling both of it there? Where would you feel?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting concept that I don't know that I sit with at the same time. I think
Mm.
that could feel very supportive, because I feel just like emotion in my body just thinking about that feeling, and especially being somebody who's a space holder for so many.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that it's just like I am the person that can always hold it together. And
Mm.
so I guess it's that questioning, is like, what happens when I'm not holding it together for myself?
Yeah.
And yeah, the idea of holding both poles feels like that could be a good um, practice for me to try.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Would you be open to exploring what that feels like in your body right now?
Yeah. um,
Where would you say your like joy and hope live in your body?
hmm, my joy and hope, they live all over. I feel like they kind of just like ooze out for sure. Like, yeah, they're just very all over myself.
Mm, mm.
Whereas like the sadness, I could feel it really like
There.
as soon as you started talking about it, and especially kind of almost like being called out on it. It's like
Called in, called in.
called in just because I've ignored all of your texts for the past however many. Doesn't mean anything's wrong or I need to cry. I felt that resistance for
Yeah,
sure. But
yeah.
I think that I felt a lot of tenderness for
Mhm.
myself come up, and almost like childlike energy of being afraid, and I think that's a lot to unpack because, in my cancer healing, it's been it's emotion,
Yeah,
it's all in my liver in Chinese medicine.
yeah, right.
Very, we store anger and resentment and unmet needs. So that activation to me is always a reminder of maybe there's things I need to be working on to support my
Yeah,
health. And so it came up very strong, but like in my
yeah,
throat, chest,
yeah,
and definitely tears were coming.
yeah, yeah. And have you sat before, like, with that little one of, or that part of your body? What helps you to ground or to hold that so that you can sit with that piece of yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a practice I've been working on a lot lately. Actually, I had it a lot. I had it this morning in the shower,
Mhm.
holding space for my little one. And I will say what's really interesting is there's a resistance for her.
Mm.
Like, I shouldn't need
Mhm.
that. I don't, I
Mm.
can just do this myself. And then,
Mm.
yet when I give this, it's generally just space to give.
Yeah.
And when I give that space and say, little one, what do you need? It is within 2 seconds.
Mm.
Like this
Mm.
morning, it was just like, caught me so
Yeah.
hard. So I feel like that could be really good, is just to schedule the time to make the space and to hold, like, I can have the joy and the gratitude and, the positive vibes, and still there's a lot of grief in my world.
Yeah.
I lose a lot
Yeah.
of things,
Yeah.
and
You got 1 minute
so
left.
Okay, thank you. Um, I would say, I was wondering, you're saying to make the time, and as you know me, I'm a strong advocate of making time for grief and having space and rituals around it. And I also heard that there was fear um, around going in and getting lost in it. And so I'm wondering if there's like lighter ways that we can build in that touching and that greeting of that grief that can help to build up trust so that you make space to sit down in a longer way. And I'm always here to help you with the deep dives as well. What I heard was there's the resistance. I don't know how, I assume you're familiar with IFS and all the parts and like internal family systems. And so you have, and I'm no expert in this at all, I just work with my parts. But you had the grief, you have like the joy and hope and conviction, and you also have this resistance part. And I think a lot of us, in my own journey as well, when we start relating to that resistance, we see it, but we still see it as a problem. And what if
mhm,
we invite that in too? What if
mhm,
we're like, okay, here's the pain, here's the sadness that I'm a little afraid to fully greet and be with, but it's here and I know it's here. And there's resistance too, and he's also here, or she or they or whatever. And there's also my joy and my
mhm.
conviction, right? And we're all here at the same time, and it's okay. We all allowed to be here. We're
Yeah,
maybe don't let the resistance drive. They don't get the driver's seat, but they're
yeah,
here, and we have to greet them, because if we pretend they're not here, then we might get into some, you
yeah,
know, trying to play hide and seek with this thing that just starts getting bigger and bigger and take over. So what does
yeah.
your resistance feel like in your body?
Well, this just feels, it's really funny because I literally coach people on this all the time around having, and this is why I think it is important to get support with other people. And so, yeah, I think it's just being able to like sit with all the feelings, and the resistance for me, I know, comes from just thinking I'm fine,
Mm,
because, and I think it is just a matter of letting myself feel all the feelings and welcome everybody to the table and give them a minute, and
Yep.
it it'll be all right. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Awesome work, both of you. Amazing. Willow, first question for you. What was that all about for you?
Yeah, just so interesting to, even in a role play like this, literally came up for me last night. And I have been crying a lot this week and just letting it all out. And I, like I said, I coach people all the time about feeling all their feelings and letting everybody come to the table and checking in with the inner child. And it is funny, you know, even when I know this, it's funny how resistant I can still be to the practice. Like, that's for other people, you know? So it's just interesting, like how I'm like, oh my gosh, we're role playing and I'm fucking crying. Like, okay. So that has felt very good.
Well,
Mm.
thank you for that share, Amanda. What was that all about for you?
I wasn't sure how that was going to go at all, but it was really beautiful to, we even talked about this before the call, and to see other layers and to what you were bringing and the emotionality of it was so beautiful. And I'm so grateful for you showing up in that way, Willow. Yeah. And I just have a lot of curiosity and love for your parts.
So thanks for this process. And again, I love this part and this opportunity on this platform to actually have this real thing, you know, being witnessed by others, because this is real. And so a lot of people will absolutely relate to it and a lot of people will not. And that's okay too, because we're not here to please everyone. We're not here to please anybody. In fact, we're just here to share the relevant truth, as I've been learning from this amazing human being called Sean Callaghy, and the Unblinded group, and his words to love it in the loving pursuit of the relevant truth. And that's what this is all about. And like you said, you kind of insinuated we do lie to ourselves, we do hide from ourselves, we run away from ourselves, and it is about facing the relevant truth. But I'd like to contextualize just a little bit for the listeners before I hand over the mic to both of you. One thing I learned from Joe Dispenza so beautifully, and his displayed by him, and how he demystifies this whole idea of meditation, and to think of the language, or words and language, is the language of the brain, and feelings and emotions, you know, that's the language of the body, and they are connected. The mind and the body are connected, and it's all about vibration. It's all about frequency. It's all about patterns. And what's happening in our lives is that we're just following some sort of program that we learned as a child. And that's why they brought up the child in this, which the immature brain can't process all this crazy information that's being downloaded on them. And so they have to make decisions about what's real in life. And oftentimes it's not real at all. But not having that guide, which we now can get as an adult, and talking to our child at the same time. And so that's why having these kinds of conversations is so critically important, because here's the other relevant truth. Whatever is in our mind, it sends out patterns of energy. Let's just simplify it that way. Call it frequency, if you that will affect every single cell in your body. In fact, it's going to radiate at least 12 to 15 feet away from you. And if you don't believe it, well, just go and Google it and you'll find out that that's the truth. So that means that all your thoughts are affecting every single cell of your body in a very positive or in a very negative way. And so we give meaning to events, we give meanings to words that either serve us or don't serve us, physically, basically. And so that's why having the opportunity to get those very specific distinctions, which is what this podcast is doing, that information that can break through, that can unlock your superpower, which is to be absolutely healthy at any given time. Because one thing I know, and this is the Viktor Frankl book, you know, Man's Search for Meaning, very horrible experience during the Second World War, which, interestingly enough, I think 32% of the people on TikTok think it never existed. It's a myth. And another 20% think it's a lie, whatever. The truth is that what he stated, the last freedom of man is to be able to choose your attitude. And so that's what all of this is about. I'm handing over the mic to both of you. Starting off with Amanda, your thoughts on that process and guidance that, you know, people can get towards what you did with Willow.
Yeah, I feel like so I, as I said at the beginning, I'm a poet and artist and do a lot of grief work, space holding, advocacy around grief. And what I really love to go with people is really like clearing from the body, not clearing, because I think that grief and a lot of emotions are waves. They don't disappear. We're not healing to get rid of emotions. We're just learning how to ride them and ride especially the big peaks of the waves when they're in our bodies. And they will circle back. But I think once we get that trust with them, we understand, we trust ourselves more with it, and we also are not exiling any parts of ourselves. And so in this process, it's like a little taste of it, what we did with Willow, of just like, let's just examine what's there, and then we can move towards like actually emoting and ritual and ways of actually moving the emotions. So yeah, and it was as a personal friend of mine, it was really sweet to see you feeling it and reflecting on it in just even this role play.
Willow?
Yeah, it's I appreciate the waves, and I am noticing that for myself. As I shared, I've been really emotional the past few weeks and allowing myself. I drove in my van up to Castle Lake, and it was like I got a very direct hit, like, go up there. And I was like, I don't want to go there. And I have all these other things to do. And it was crazy. I got up there and didn't have any Wi-Fi, and it was like snowing and cold. And I just sat in my van and literally cried for like 4 hours. And it felt so good. And I've been just noticing, like, letting, sometimes crying, not even knowing why.
Mm,
And then like last night, I got really, really triggered,
mm,
and I couldn't understand what was happening, but I felt anxiety, which I do not feel in my body anymore. And it's like, oh, this is something to pay attention to. And I got in the shower and I just really sat and I said, what is this? What is this? And then I recognized, I could feel it, that it was my inner child wound was coming up, but I had no idea what. And all I did was say, hey, what's this about? I said, I'm here listening. And it did not even take 1 second. And it was like, oh, this is your mother wound, which I've done so much work around, but it was triggered by a connection that I'm in right now. And it was interesting how raw and how like, oh
mm.
my God, it just, I mean, it shocked me. I do this work you know me, like
Yeah.
I, this work, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful how it came through. And it's crazy. I'm sitting here, I live on 5 acres in the forest. And as I was sitting processing with the person that I was having these feelings around, which had nothing to do with them, 4 buck came walking through the property, all of them with different, and it was interesting because just feeling my father energy and how my energy with him was different, and this mother wound. And yeah, just making the space, I think, is really, and literally I just tell people, just ask your inner child like what they need. And it feels to me dumb. I'm like, that's dumb. Like, I've been so resistant, like, get your
Yeah.
shit together, lady. This is me. Like, I'm hardcore and badass. I'm like, I don't, I punch people. It's gonna be fine. And then now it's like, no, like there is a part of me, that tender part from deep, deep, deep in my youth, 3 to 5 years old, that is still showing up today. And
Mhm.
I've been deep in this work, healing my cancer,
Yeah.
healing cancer for this time. So I appreciate the reflection and that tool to hold all of it. Yeah, and see what that feels like.
Mhm.
So this is why this is raw and unfiltered, and where people get to share what's present, what's on their heart, especially for those people that are very closed to these kinds of conversations. And this is not fabricated. It is not woo-woo. It's none of that. I mean, there's so much evidence, and empirical evidence and history in these kinds of things, that they are absolutely relevant today for us to pay attention to. And so that's why, I love to have these conversations. And just again, to briefly contextualize, as a growing human being, even in the womb, actually even prior to being conceived, because of your DNA and because of the experiences of your ancestors, it affects the expression of your DNA. And all that shows up in your growth in the first 5 to 10 years, where you're very much at the effect of the world around you. What that means is that you really don't have much control as to what happens to you and what decisions and ideas you get because of the world around you. And so you start developing all these programming, just like a computer, all the information that put in that may work for you or may not work for you. And that's why we talk about the inner child, but that's why we also talk about traumas. And then in my particular case, if you've been listening to my other podcast, I talk about how I was insulted by a psychologist who said, yeah, you've been traumatized as a child by your parents. And I said to him, no, I'm going to fire you because you don't know what you're talking about. I had the most amazing parents. And here's the one cat, my Maine Coon, just woke up. He wants one of these little gizmos. That's the only reason he sticks around. But the point of the matter is that if you're a 3-month-old baby, and I'm going to feed him right now. Hold on a second. Yeah, again, that's the only reason he likes me. Okay. You're in your crib and you have a sibling that just fell down the stairs, but it's your feeding time and your mom or dad runs away, and that's trauma. And sometimes it's the most simple things, the most standard things that you wouldn't even think of. And it's amazing how you probably traumatize your own kids having them. And so, it's a programming and a meaning that we've given something that then shows up in the boardroom, when you're a CEO and now suddenly you have a 5-year-old temper tantrum. And that's true. And that's why these kinds of conversations, as shameful as some people might consider them, or weak as some might consider them, or crying, what many people consider being weak, is actually strength. It's the courage to face your inner child and your inner traumas. And again, finding that safe space with people like yourselves, because I feel your heart, I feel your intention. And again, and that's what counts most, because when your heart is sending out that frequency that's authentic, when it's inauthentic, then it doesn't work. But when it's authentic, whoa, that's powerful. And that's what you guys bring to the table. As we wrap it up, any final thoughts from any of you about anything that's present, that's on your heart, that you absolutely want people to know?
Yeah, I just want to dovetail onto what you just said around the strength of, I feel like vulnerability and rawness of our emotions. And part of my family also believed, not my mother, thankfully, that's why I cry, but part of my family also believed that like being good was to not cry. And even at funerals, even when you've lost somebody, and I just think that what you said, Willow, about being a badass and like, why am I doing this? I'm a badass, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, being a badass is being raw and vulnerable and real and publicly if you need to be or want to be, and that's part of my mission now with like the talk I just gave on collective grieving at Ignite in San Francisco, and my book. I just wrote a book on my journey, my latest grief journey, Walk Us Home is what it's called. And all of that is like outing myself and my story and my emotions. And I think that is strength. It's been reflected back to me many times. At first, I just thought it was normal, and now I hear it as strength. And so just to reframe what we think of as badass or whatever fill in the blank word as strength, I think we need that huge culture shift, because we need to be feeling and processing our emotions way more than we are, and admitting our vulnerabilities and our weakness, and not our weaknesses. I wouldn't even call them weaknesses, just our vulnerabilities and our tender spots, so that they're not hidden and we're not masking and we're not pretending, because you can mask so much that you can't even see yourself, and nobody else can see you either. And then that is a lonely, ill place to be.
Yeah.
No, and very well said. And it is
Yeah.
all about language, whatever resonates with you. But it's that finding that safe space. And sorry, but I just want you guys to see my cat. Come
Yeah.
No, he's
You've
not
been
there.
waiting for this moment.
So no disrespect to you there, Amanda. Here,
You're
let
fine.
me come on.
You're
Let me,
fine.
here he is.
Oh, look at how fluffy. So cute.
Um,
Sorry about Especially
I
as a
love
partner,
it. You
right?
know the reality of your relationship, though. You're like, he only likes me because of this.
All right, there you go. All right, Willow, I know you wanted to share something.
Yeah, I just could not agree more. Yeah, with what Amanda's saying. And it's funny because I live in these dialectics of like, I know I used to hide everything before my diagnosis. And right before my diagnosis, I had one of my kid was having mental illness and ended up manic in a psychiatric ward. And I literally just couldn't hold it in anymore. And I actually wrote an article that got published in the Huffington Post, and my shit was on blast. And my own mother said, I didn't know things were that bad.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Like, she was one of the people that I did tell, but I guess I always had a way of like, but I'm okay, I'm going to be fine because I'm protecting other people. And so my journey has, I mean, I am like vulnerable beyond vulnerable, and I share and I believe in raw emotion. And I noticed that there's places that like this, that what happened to me last night and this morning, like came out of left field. And so just understanding that whether you've done this work at all, like I'm just going to say it is worth it. Like it is worth being uncomfortable. And if you are doing this work, know that you can still get stuck and there's places to keep leaning in. And that's, yeah, it felt shitty last night and felt shitty this morning. And then when everything clicked, when I was in the shower and I was like, oh, that's my mother wound from when I was like 3 or 4, then it was comical, but now I have something to work with. And I was able to express to the people around me what's going on. So I could not, I really encourage people to look at the emotional part of your body, and and it is such a part of our culture to sweep things under the rug. That is the way that I grew up and my partner grew up, and it was just like so unhealthy. And I know that's how cancer manifested in my body, a big part of it. So I just always encourage people, if you're having health issues, Louise Hay has an amazing book called You Can Heal Your Life. And parts of
Right.
it are, pardon?
No, right. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, parts of it are a little bit much, but then when you really look at like how things can be affecting in your body, it's an important place to research for yourself. And I
Yep.
just encourage people to feel in there.
No, awesome. Well, we are over time, so just real quick, Amanda, how do people get a hold of you?
My website is cronintraining.life. So CRONE intraining.life. I have a new book out. It's on my website as well, called Walk Us Home. It's my poetry book. And I do a lot of grief space holding around loss of life and illness and relationship and things like that. So if it resonates, please reach out.
Yeah, it's great, for people to reach out and find and read your poetry, your book, because it also contextualizes things in a different way, in a way that we absolutely need, that we may not necessarily get from the people around us, or can easily find someone like yourself to guide us. Again, it's this kind of work that helps contextualize and helps us guide us in seeing things through a different lens, through a different prism. Will, how do people get a hold of you?
My website is meetwillowstar.com, MEET willowstar.com. And there's links to, I make TikTok videos every day. I offer van healing sessions on weekends with Willow and one-on-one mentoring, and some plant medicine stuff. I got lots of things to offer. And I have a nonprofit, Branches of Hope Healing Haven. And that link I'll add that to my website ASAP. So we can support people healing cancer with the services I have when they don't have the money to do that. Because I think,
Awesome. Well, thank you
everything.
both. These are very important conversations to be had. For many people, this may have seemed, rather uncomfortable, and especially in those times when it is uncomfortable, then we typically will generalize, distort, or delete information to protect ourselves and our defense mechanism, and really discount what is being said. And so, if anybody's doing that in this podcast, if at least you're listening to us to this point, I hope that you're not. But if somebody else did, just let them know. This, if you're triggered, this is specifically information that is going to be very relevant for you in your own journey. And the simple fact that you guys have gone through that journey already. Sorry for the noise out there, but you guys have already gone through that journey. Speaks volumes in your ability to guide others. And so I thank you for all of that. My name is Dr. Bart Rademaker, and this is the Doctor's Guide podcast, raw and unfiltered, and we will be back.